Hi, everyone. At this point, we're going to move on and talk about the research project. At this point in the project, you should have obviously chosen your topic. You should have done your initial research and created your literary review. Now it's time to take that research and start putting it into your phase 3 part of the project, which is basically you're writing the whole introduction of your paper. And it's not just an introduction paragraph, it's the whole first section of the paper, probably half of your paper. So I'm going to explain it step by step. This introduction section for your paper is really like writing a full research paper that you're used to. The steps that we do after this are going to be completely new things you've probably never done before. This is going to be very much more along the lines of a research paper that you've probably already done. The whole purpose of phase 3 is to provide the reader with all the background information about your topic. So when the reader is reading your paper, they have an understanding of the topic, its history, how it came about. So then when they get to the second part of your paper, they have that knowledge. Now, after all your research and after you write this, you are really one of the probably top experts in the field in some ways on your topic. You probably know more than 95% of the whole population on your topic. So you need to kind of fill your audience in on your topic so they have some understanding when they're reading through the rest of the paper. Okay, so I'm going to go step by step and explain how you're going to do this part. So this is really what I call the research paper because this is the first part of your paper. Okay, now, like I said, you should have finished your research, found a variety of sources, some overview sources that explain your topic, some history sources that lay out the history of how your topic came about, some sources talking about possible solutions to your topic. Hopefully you've read and you analyzed that information and you've completed your literary review. So now we're going to take that information and we're going to start writing our paper. So this part of the paper is going to have multiple sections in it, okay? So first you're going to identify and describe what the problem or the issue is. You're going to describe important terms that the reader may need to know to understand, almost like creating a glossary that will later be put at the end of the paper in an appendix. You need to identify why this issue is important to society and to you. You need to provide the history and background of your problem. You need to discuss the organizations that are affected by your problem. You need to talk about the stakeholders and their different views on your topic. And then you need to set forth certain solutions. And then finally, after all this research, the last thing you're going to do is you're going to start forming a hypothesis. So we'll talk through each of these so you understand what's in each. So the first thing is you want to do an introductory paragraph. Your introductory paragraph, you want to be something really catchy that grabs the reader's attention. Don't start with this paper is about the death penalty. Think of something catchy, a phrase, a quote, a story, an anecdote, something that really catches the reader's attention. You want them to want to read. And then you just write a couple sentences that sort of provide an overview of your topic. So that will be your introduction paragraph. The next section you're going to have is the description of your problem, okay? You're going to briefly define it and summarize the issue. So what is your topic and summarize it. Provide an overview of your topic. This is going to be very similar to the introduction that you included on your literary review. You may just have to beef it up a little bit. This also needs to have internal APA citations. Pretty much this whole part of the paper is going to have a lot of citations. You need to tell the reader where you found your information, and they should be internal citations as set forth in the APA guides. Okay, so make sure you're including those internal citations. The next section you're going to have are some glossary terms. So when you're doing your topic, you have to think about what words would an average everyday citizen not understand. Not somebody in criminal justice, an average citizen. So if there's terms or jargon or information that an average person wouldn't know, you need to be able to define those terms. And you can do it like a dictionary if you want. Write the term, write the definition, and you can identify them. Make sure you're citing where you get your definitions. Now, your glossary will eventually, it's in the middle of the paper right now, but when we put our final paper together, we're going to cut it and paste it at the end. And it's going to end up being an appendix for the end, appendix at the end of your paper. But what you're going to do is when you write your paper and you use that term for the first time, so DNA. So DNA is best evidence for forensic analysis. The first time you're using the term DNA, at the end of that sentence, you'll write see Appendix A for full definition of DNA. So then you'll be referring your audience to the appendix to find the dictionary. But you need to have those terms in this glossary section for now. Now, the next section, importance to society and personal connection. So why did you choose this topic? Why is it interesting to you? What impact will it have on society? You should have already done part of this when you did phase 1 and you started explaining to me your topic and why you chose your topic. So you can cut and paste what you have. You may need to beef it up and sort of make it into sentences and make it flow a little bit better. But it's very similar to what you did in phase 1. So build on what you already have to write this section. The next section is going to be your history or background. So when did this first become a problem? Why is this an issue, or why is it a problem? How did this problem come about? What led to this problem? How has it evolved over time? How have some of the solutions evolved over time? Again, this is all research. Make sure you're including internal citations throughout this whole section. You'll need lots of them because you're setting forth the history. When you're writing some of these sections, if you realize, oh, I don't have research on it, you can go back and find more sources. That's why you're doing this. You can build on what you have. You're working on this through the whole semester, so you're going to constantly be building on it. So if you get to one of these sections, you're like, crap, I thought I had this, but I don't. Go back and find a few more sources that are going to be able to fill in the gaps that you need for this portion of your paper. The next section, organizations affected. You're going to need to identify the different parts of the criminal justice system that are affected by this problem. So remember, the first week we talked about rocking the boat, police, courts, and corrections. If you make a change in one, it affects the other. This is where you're going to complete that rocking the boat analysis. Talk about which parts of the criminal justice system are affected by your issue and how do changes to this possibly affect the other parts of the criminal justice system. The next section is stakeholders. You need to identify specific people, organizations, agencies, groups that would be affected by your issue. Don't just say pro-death penalty people, anti-death penalty people. You need to tell me exactly who you're talking about. Who are the people that would be pro? What organizations, what groups, certain religions, certain genders? Tell me which ones are for, which ones are against. This is also where you're going to have to do your force field analysis. So the groups that you identify as stakeholders for, in favor of the societal issue and changes, what are their arguments? The people that are against, what are their arguments? So this should also have internal citations because you're going to have to identify them and identify their arguments for and against. This would be one of those places where I showed you on the research when you have that opposing sides database, that GALE is really good. It helps you write this section because you can see the arguments for and against your topic. Make sure you're using internal citations. Don't forget, you need this force field analysis. So not only are you identifying your stakeholders, you're identifying issues for and against your issue. The next section is identify various solutions to your issue. So you have death penalty. What are different solutions to the death penalty? We don't have it at all. We have it in limited circumstances. We have it all the time, right? So what are some of the different solutions that have been proposed to solve your problem? This should be based on research. When you do your research, hopefully you found some sources that talk about ways to resolve this issue or problem. That's what this should be based on. It should be citing those people that have already given this issue some thought and what are some of the different things that they've thought about on how to solve this issue. Okay, now once you've done all of that research, that's all just like a research paper like you've done in the past. Now that you've done that, that's your big overview of your topic. That provides the reader with a big overview of your topic. Now you really need to think in detail, something specific about your topic that you want to gather information for. Maybe you want to know somebody's ultimate opinion on a portion of your topic. Maybe you want to get people's opinions on one of the solutions that you think is the best solution for your issue or problem. Your hypothesis has to be specific. It has to focus on a specific thing. So if I did the death penalty, the hypothesis really shouldn't be, oh, do we like the death penalty? The hypothesis should be more specific and more detailed. Maybe specifically, do we want to bring back firing squad as a form of death penalty method? So you need to think about your topic in broad terms to write the research part. But now we're really going to focus on one narrow aspect of our topic. And we really want to get into details on specific issue. Okay, so we're going to develop a hypothesis. Now, you might not have ever done this before, so this can be a little tricky. So remember, a hypothesis is a proposed explanation made on the basis of limited evidence as a starting point for further investigation. So based on your limited research that you've done, which is probably a lot, you want to sort of start with a topic, an idea that you want to gather more information from somebody or other people about that particular issue. It needs to be a concise statement about a specific issue in your ultimate topic. So let's think about developing it. This can be tricky because you maybe have never done it. So after you review all your research, write down a question about that research that you would like answered. So once you kind of take a step back and look at all your research, what's something that you researched that really kind of stuck out in your head? Oh, I wish I knew this, okay? So for example, should the state be required to pay for DNA analysis in cases that could possibly exonerate convicted criminals? So maybe your topic was use of DNA in criminal convictions, okay? Or the use of DNA evidence. So the question is, a very specific question to that is, who should pay for that? Should the state be required? What if the state doesn't want it and just the defense wants it? Should the state be required to pay for that analysis? Or it could be a question based on what you think should happen. So one of the solutions that you looked up, you think is the best solution. So the state should be required to pay for DNA analysis in the case that could possibly exonerate convictions. So the question is, should you do it? You're going to flip that into a hypothesis, which is what you think the solution is. Okay, so you're going to review all your research. You're going to come up with questions that you have. Then you're going to take those questions and you're going to turn it into hypothesis, right? So the question is, should the state pay for it? And then your hypothesis is the state should pay for it or the state should not pay for it, okay? So the hypothesis should be a statement. You're writing questions to kind of come up with the hypothesis, but when you write the hypothesis, it should be a statement on a side. You're going to take a stand one way or the other on your question, okay? So after reviewing the research, one can draw the conclusion, solitary confinement should no longer be permitted as a punishment in prisons for any offense, okay? It's a statement. It's not a question anymore, it's a statement. Or based on these conclusions, police departments should use a 12-hour work shift instead of an 8-hour work shift. Those are hypotheses. They make a statement. We can test them. We can go back and research that, whether it's true, but those are our opinions. Those are our statements, okay? So when you write your hypothesis, ask yourself a couple questions to make sure it's a proper hypothesis. Number one, is it a statement or a question? If it's a question, rewrite it, pick a stand and answer to that question and turn it into a statement. Second thing, is that statement testable? Can you go out and ask people's opinions on how they feel about that statement? Because that's going to be one of our next steps. We're going to go out and ask people what they think about our hypothesis. So if you have a neutral, general thing that doesn't really express an opinion on anything, you're going to really have trouble when you get to collecting people's data on what they think about it. So take a stand. It can be controversial. It doesn't have to be like this general wishy-washy thing. Really pick an issue, take a stand on that issue, and then you can test if other people agree with it, okay? I find that people have an easier time writing the paper if they pick something sort of slightly controversial. Now, a couple things, make sure your hypothesis is based something to do with your research, and it should be something specific, not your whole general idea on your topic, but a specific narrow issue from your research. Keep it simple. Don't make it super complicated. Just narrow it down to one specific thing. Make sure it can be tested, provable or disprovable based on a survey. You can change it if you need to as you're working through it. Don't, get upset and don't do it because you can't decide. Start with something, and as you work through it, you'll be able to revise it if you need to. And the other thing is, don't be afraid to take a stand. If you're wrong, it's fine. It doesn't affect your grade on the paper. The idea is coming up with the hypothesis and testing it. If you test it and people disagree with you, that's fine. You assess that at the end of the paper. I really thought this, but people didn't agree with me. That's a great demonstration to me of the learning process and learning from what you were doing. So don't stress that you have to pick something that everybody's going to agree on. It's better to have controversial, and it doesn't even matter if people disagree with you at the end. So pick something that you're interested in. Okay, so this section so when you get to the last section of the paper that you're writing, so we discussed what it is. I was teaching you what it is. Now, when you're writing the paper, this section called hypothesis should state what your hypothesis is going to be and explain why you chose this as your hypothesis. Okay. So I just explained how to come up with your hypothesis. When you're writing this section, make sure you state what you're going to use as your hypothesis, and then tell me why you chose that as your hypothesis. Okay, now you'll need to then have a conclusion that kind of wraps up all the things that you just said. So it's not the conclusion of your whole paper. Ultimately, it's the conclusion of your introduction sentence. So a lot of times what makes it really interesting is if you can tie it back to your introduction paragraph in some way, and kind of tie in everything that you talked about in a somewhat short conclusion. Now, when you're putting all of this together, people always ask me pages, how long? I cannot fathom with all the sections that you have to write that it could be less than 5 to 7 pages. I don't have a specific thing, like I'm not going to count say 5 pages. But when I grade these, it is very hard to cover the things that are necessary in the paper and have it be less than 5 to 7 pages. And I know it sounds like a lot, but we're going to keep building on it. Other sections are going to be shorter. This is probably the biggest section you're going to write from now to the end of the semester. And you will thank me that you're doing it in the 3rd or 4th week of the semester, because you won't want to write this much later because you're going to be busy with other classes. So spend some time really doing this, because it is going to be a huge chunk of your ultimate final paper. And so to realistically cover it with the amount you need, you probably need to be that long. If you're a lot shorter than that, you're not giving me enough detail. You have to use APA internal citations. Make sure you print that guideline or stop in the library and get the guidelines. You have to do it. Talk to librarians, have them help you. And you must include your reference page at the end of the paper, okay? It's ultimately going to go even further at the end, but for now it needs to go in there. One thing I want to point out, this is not a rough draft. People think, oh, this is a rough draft, I'm just going to turn it in, and it's a piece of crap. If I can't read it, if you have grammar, if you have spelling, if you're not using any proper English skills at all, I'm not going to read it. I'm going to send it right back and say redo. It has to be readable to me. Now, that doesn't mean if you have mistakes, I'm going to fail you. I expect some mistakes, but some people literally are typing it at 4 in the morning and don't even look at it. If it's unreadable, I'm sending it back. If you don't have internal citations, I'm sending it back. If you don't have a reference page, I'm sending it back. So I'm going to skim them quickly and see, is it readable? Is there citations? Is there a reference page? If there's not, I'm not even going to grade it. I'm going to ship it right back to you and say, do it again. So make sure you're not considering this a rough draft. You need to put some effort into it. Couple things, make it look like a research paper, not just answering questions, okay? And make sure it's double spaced. I hate when people send me single space. It's super hard for me to grade. So make sure it looks like a research paper, not a rough draft, and make sure it's double spaced. I highly recommend, well, not even recommend, you have to use headings for each section, okay? So number, Roman numeral 1, introduction, Roman numeral 2, glossary, Roman numeral 3, why you chose a topic. Use the headings that I provide and put headings between each section. And you can even give the sections numbers 1, 2, 3, because you're going to use that later to create a table of contents. So put those headings in now. It's also a really great way to make sure you're hitting all of the areas. So include the headings right in the paper and proofread. Read it to yourself. If that sentence doesn't make sense to you, it's not going to make sense to me. Okay, so read it out loud. When you read it out loud, a lot of times you catch those areas that are not right. The other thing I strongly, strongly recommend is contact the tutoring center. They will help you proofread, especially earlier in the semester. They have a lot more time. You don't even have to go there in person. You can go to Tutor Track. You can sign up for an appointment and Zoom with them, or you can email it to them. They can help you, give you suggestions and email it back to you. There's no cost for the tutoring center. It is a resource that is phenomenal. And every time I have students that work with them, those students do an awesome job on their papers. So a lot of you, writing may not be your forte. That's fine. You don't have to be a perfect writer, but use the resources we have on campus to help you through this. So just this is an online class doesn't mean you can't use the resources on campus. Contact the tutoring center, have them proofread, have them help you with organization and structure. I promise you'll be so happy if you do that, okay? So that's my summary of phase 3. If you have any questions about any of it, please reach out. I'll be happy to talk to you and work through it with you. I can Zoom with you and work through things, but use the librarians for APA. Use the tutoring center to help you with writing and organization and structure and grammar and spelling. Use me for questions on substance. A lot of people struggle with hypothesis. If you're struggling with hypothesis, contact me. You and I will spend a few minutes brainstorming and we'll come up with a hypothesis for you. The next stage is once you turn this in, give me a week to look them over. Then the following week, you will be scheduling a Zoom conference with me. I meet with every single student one-on-one, and we go over your paper and we talk about this is where you need to improve. This section needs a little more. This section needs a little less. You're right on target. Oh, I would delve into a little bit more of this. I will make detailed comments. I'll send them back to you. You and I will meet. We'll talk about them. And then you can make revisions, okay? If you spend the time and energy now to do a good job on this part, and then you make the corrections that I give you, after I give them to you, you will be very happy. Your life will be substantially easier for the rest of the semester. So stay up with what we're doing, make changes as you go along, and then you will have a really good chunk of what you're going to need for the rest of the semester. Okay, so I hope that helps anybody. If you need anything, please reach out, text me, we'll sign up a time to Zoom and we'll work together and get you through this. Okay, thanks. I'll see you soon.